Everyone, Joe Waxman here, the mediocre astrologer. Man, he's okay. What's up, guys? In this video, I want to look at the birth lunation cycles. And what I mean by that is that you have your sun in a particular sign, and uh the last new moon before you are born, barring if you're born on a new moon or right around one, maybe in the sign the sun sign you were born in, maybe the one previous to that. And that changes the dynamics of the situation of your life. It'll bring in themes of the former sun sign into your life. And we're going to look at that. And we're going to see that in many examples. What I did was I made, I picked out two for each sign, right? Just to give you an example of what it looks like in the person's real life, if they were born under a lunation of a previous sign, right? And this kind of explains the cusp phenomenon because essentially, anytime somebody's going to be born at 0 degrees or very early degrees of a sun sign, the last lunation is most likely, not 100%, but most likely going to be in the sign before. Therefore, it's bringing in qualities of that previous sun sign. And so you're seeing a mixed influence in the person's life and their personality. But let's get into it. Guys, don't forget to hit that like button, please. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below, a friendly one. Book a reading with me. My email is macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And yeah, let's get into it. All right, first on the list is Prince. And we're just going, you know what? Let's not go in alphabetical order. I'm going to change it. I was going to go in alphabetical order, but we should go by um um astrological order. That makes more sense. What the heck? Right. All right, so we're going to go to first one we're going to look at is Amanda Bynes. Sorry, Prince, we'll get to you in a minute. So her moon, new moon, this is the way I'm going to do it. You'll see. Just got to copy the date here. A little tedious that I have to use, you know, two charts, and one of the charts is not, it's not queued up, but you'll see. Then I got to adjust the hour because the hour is not going to be exact. All right. Okay. So Amanda Bynes, let's look at her birth chart. Aries sun. Now, what's interesting about Amanda Bynes, um, she was an actress, a Disney actress, sort of took the path of a lot of these other young girls who became corrupted by their outside influences. I don't buy this, oh, they became mentally imbalanced and therefore their parents had to take them. Bullshit. They forced them to take these severe heavy duty drugs, and then if they ever go off them, they start acting weird because it creates a mental dependency, physical dependency, and they say, look, you're acting crazy, we need to force you to be on meds and take over all your money, right? I'm not a fool. I have Pluto in the 12th. I fucking see this shit. I'm Scorpio rising, Pluto in the 12th, Sun in the 8th. I know what's going on. That's what they're doing. They're manipulating these kids. They get them, they're like, oh, you have anxiety, depression, here, take this pill, right? And then once they take that pill, it's done. Right, it's very difficult because you form a dependency. Your whole system adapts to it. Then if you ever go off it, you go crazy, and then they're like, "Look, you're crazy. You need to get back on the meds." Right? They do that all the time. I've seen it in real life with real people. That's what's going on. They're corrupting these kids. Okay, that's the truth. Disney is a corrupt, satanic organization. So is Nickelodeon. So are all of them. Right. So she's an American former actress. Bynes began her career as a child actress, appearing on Nickelodeon, sketch comedies, spin-off series, Amanda Show. During mid-teens, she played. All right, so she did a bunch of stuff. Then, let's see. She's heralded for her work, but then, in her highly publicized personal life, she has struggled with mental health bullshit. The real mental health issue is that they're forcing drugs on these kids that that they then can't live without, or have a major backlash if they do go off them for a while, right? And then she was in conservatorship because, oh my gosh, she's crazy, she's crazy, we gave her these drugs and now she's acting crazy, right? Fuck you. You're lying pieces of shit, right? Um, and then she announced her new career as a manicurist. She dropped out because I don't blame her, right? These people are Satanists. They're evil. They destroy people and take advantage of them. They're not good people. I'm telling you, right? But let's look a little deeper, right? Um, I mean, just as their chart, just to get some clarity about what happened with her. Let's see here. I mean, so Pisces, so Saturn is in a superior square to Jupiter. Jupiter is her in her 10th whole sign house, so this is bringing a lot of success, right? But Saturn, which is authority, conservatorship, parents, rulership, right? Saturn's ruling the 9th and 10th. So like the public domain, but also like ninth whole sign house. It is teachers, right? Teachers and people in like teachers, gurus, like that sort of thing, elders, right? In that position to influence her. Saturn's ruling that. Saturn's also ruling the 8th whole sign house, ninth quadrant, but 8th whole sign house. And so shared resources, right? So and it's the spot Jupiter's ruling the 7th house. So Saturn is the Jupiter's dispositing Saturn. So and Saturn's overcoming a square with Jupiter. So it's like tied to her success, right? And so it's like almost like stealing her money. Saturn's ruling the 8th house or 8th whole sign house, right? Um Shared resources. So yeah, it's really quite sinister. And this is not good. This is not good at all. Saturn is not her worst planet. It's Mars in the 8th, right? Mars in the 8th in Capricorn. Plus, Mars. So Mars in Capricorn is in good dignity, but Neptune signifies loss, shared resources. Mars ruling the 12th house, right? Also loss. Um, yeah, and 6th whole sign house conflict. I mean, 6 in the 8th is not bad, but it is dispositing South Node Pluto in Scorpio, which does indicate abuse and conflict, right? But anyway, let's look at the lunation that she was born into. This is the last new moon of the that happened right before her birth, right? So this is the energy that she's carrying into her life, which is Pisces, and it is 10th whole sign house, right? With Jupiter in Pisces in domicile in the 10th. So it's very success. I mean, this is a very elevated sort of lunation cycle, elevated, creative. Pisces is going to bring forth all notion like the associations of movies, cinema, creative work, right? Let's see. So any planet that switches signs or switches direction is going to be important in the person's life, in their narrative. So Mars, right? Mars moves from the 7th to the 8th. So that's significant. See, Venus moves from Aries into Taurus, so gains dignity in North Node. And so like manicurist, right? No, Venus in Taurus, beauty, North Node, right? She wants to be involved with beauty. So she becomes a manicurist, right? Venus is ruling the 12th whole sign house, and the 6th, actually fifth whole sign. So yeah, entertainment, I guess. But yeah, I mean, Pisces also indicates loss, right? And boundarylessness. So these themes are gonna play out in her life, right? Um, the loss of career, 10th house. It's not to say that always, Pisces will represent sort of some sort of loss, but it also happens to, has to do with this Saturn overcoming her Jupiter. So her success, really blocking her success, which is unfortunate, and in Pisces, right? So Saturn. influencing this whole Pisces house, right, in a negative way. And then Mars, um, in the lunation, Mars squaring the lunation as well, which is her most negative planet, most difficult planet. Uranus as well. So sudden shocks and things like that will plague her. So yeah, that's unfortunate story of Amanda Bynes. Probably not as bad as it gets, but definitely not. I mean, it's not that unfortunate. She was pretty fortunate, let's be honest. But they did fuck with her, and they did try and corrupt her soul, her mind, her body, her everything, right? But anyway, let's move on. Next, we got Ram Dass. This is a really interesting one, for obvious reasons, which we'll see. Okay, Ram Dass, really, really powerful chart with North Node, Uranus, Sun in Aries, in the 10th whole sign house. Of course, he's got his MC in Pisces in the 9th whole sign house. So that's a very spiritual sort of career. He was spiritual, right? The other thing that just archetypally that a lunation in the previous sign can indicate is a change in one's career or a distinct, in one's path, right, in life, and that happened both with Ram Dass and Amanda Bynes, right? But let's look up his lunation cycle. I think saying lunation cycle is redundant. It's really just lunation, as far as I know, but sometimes I'm going to be redundant. So Ram Dass started as a professor, so ninth house topics, right? College professor. And then he was kicked out of school and he became a spiritual guru, which also, so Sun, Moon, Pisces, MC, exact, right? Venus goes from the 8th into the 9th whole sign house in Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces. So that's 8th house in Aquarius. That's going to be much more scientific, research oriented, right? And that's where he started out experimenting with drugs. And then he ended up as a guru, spiritual guru, Venus in Pisces. Let's see what else. Mercury goes all the way from Aries to Taurus. Fine, I guess. I don't really know what to say about. I mean, I guess I could break it down, but I don't. It's not as relevant. If I want to spend more time on it, then yeah, but I don't. What else can we say? I mean, natal moon and Sag is going to relate very much to his career as well, both as a college teacher and as a guru, right? Um, let's see. North Node Uranus in Aries, something very, very shocking and enlightening, enlightenment itself, right? Both and both. That's going to be the case. Yeah, I mean, Mercury's tied to foreign things, spiritual things, but also third house and fourth house significations. So the intellect, but anyway, going from Aries to Taurus, but that's incidental mostly. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is very relevant for a spiritual teacher, right? Wonder if anything changes. So I'm just going to look at each individually. The Pluto retrograde. Just trying to see if anything went retrograde or went direct. Yeah, everything seems to be the same. All right. So that's Ram Dass. Um, from college professor to spiritual guru. So that's interesting and fits the archetype. All right, let's move on. We'll go to Taurus now, and we're going to go to Queen Elizabeth. Excuse me, I have a little bit of mucus in my throat. I had a little bit of a cold for a little while. All right. Now you can see here that Queen Elizabeth was under an Aries lunation cycle, even though her sun was at 0 degrees Taurus, right? So anytime a planet, like I said, anytime the sun is at very early degrees, it's probably the lunation cycle that they're under, that they were born under, is probably in the previous sign. So she's a very Aryan, with sun exalted in Aries, Taurus, right? And Taurus with the early degree Taurus with the lunation cycle in Aries are very aggressive. They're fighters. They are bulls with horns, right? Another one that comes to mind who I didn't choose is Candace Owens, which is obvious. She's so hyper aggressive, right? And she's got our Mars in Cancer. But all right, so we got this is in the third house. So having to do with siblings. Siblings would be a major issue, a major theme for her. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but she was not like the first choice, the first in line for the throne. I think some of her siblings were, but anyway, it was her out of her siblings. What else? Venus stays in Pisces. I'm just looking for things that are anomalistic, right? It all seems pretty much the same. Chiron plays into it. It's in both. Now this is square the nodes. Square her natal node. Square the nodes. Yeah, square the new moon. Square the nodes by 1 degree. And that's separating, but it's still relevant, significant. And then trine Neptune in Leo. So that's interesting. But let's just see here. Just to see. So Mercury went retrograde. Saturn also went retrograde, right? I think so. Mercury, then Saturn. Let's check. Yeah, Mercury. No, Saturn's retrograde, but Mercury goes retrograde. So that's significant. So we can see that yeah, Mercury. Yeah, so it's Mercury's going forward and then going back. So there's in some of them, Mercury's vastly in a vastly different space from the lunation compared to the birth. Hers is very similar. And so what that can indicate is that the topics that Mercury rules, the house sign topics, are going to be very focused and not very changing. So this is a much more potent Mercury because it's very slow overall, right? It's moving forward slightly, stationing, then moving backwards a little bit. And so Mercury's ruling 8th house, right? Shared resources, power, control, and this would be six whole sign house, 5th quadrant, 6 whole sign house. So very competitive, conflictual house. So I don't know. I mean, it's obviously conjunct Uranus, well, out of sign, but still it's something very focused about her communication and very harsh as well. I would say Aries, Uranus, 3rd house, well, 4th, if you Aries, anyway. She's probably gonna be very aggressive. Let's put it that way. Very aggressive Taurus, very, stubborn, aggressive, fighting, initiating change, Aries. But, yeah. I mean, we don't know her personality that well, but I mean, she was not a lightweight. She was pretty severe as far as I know. All right. The next one, uh Rudolf Hess. He was a Nazi. And that's perfect, right? Um, yeah. So I mean, sometimes you get these hyper aggressive Tauruses, and you wonder why. It's probably for this reason. I mean, I'm not changing the location, so it's going to be like very, very minorly off, but it's not in any significant way, just in case anyone's wondering. All right. So we got 16 degrees Aries as the lunation cycle that Rudolf Hess was born under. And he was a Nazi, so let me just read. Was a German politician, leading member of the Nazi Party, Nazi Germany, appointed deputy Führer to Adolf Hitler. Hess held that position until 1941 when he flew solo to go to exit. So he wanted to exit from the war. He flew to UK to negotiate, like, please spare me, don't kill me. He was taken prisoner and eventually convicted, and he was still serving his life sentence at the time of suicide in 1987. Okay. Right, but war, Aries, aggression, right? He's a Taurus, but he's interested in war. He's in the war cycle. Plus, eclipse, right? Aries eclipse, very significant. Mercury's in that right in that range. Mercury gains some dignity for him because out of Pisces into Aries, conjunct the North Node. Venus both in Pisces in the ninth whole sign house. And so that indicates philosophy, like a love of philosophy, not necessarily a good philosophy, but I mean, even though it's exalted, it's somehow very high, like very, I don't know, lofty or something, but it is what it is. I mean, it's a Nazi philosophy, so it's obviously not a good philosophy, even though Venus is exalted. He probably is very romantic about his Nazi philosophy, right? Nazis, Aryans are the best, right? Aries, Aryan. We're the best. We're the most beautiful. We're the most wonderful. I don't know. Something like that. His ascendant lord Venus is in Capricorn. Okay. So that's not, I mean, it's in the seventh house. What's really interesting here, my father was uh Cancer rising with Moon in Capricorn in the seventh, and he was a counselor, right? So it's not necessary that somebody with this combination is going to be a bad person, right? Or have a bad heart. Yes, my father was very neglectful in many ways, but in fact, he tried to help people. And this is actually a pretty similar chart to my father because he was also a Taurus sun, North Node in Aries. But yeah, my father was helpful. So like poor dignity planets can go either way. It's kind of like losing energy. But anyway, Mars in the eighth for a day chart is um yeah, pretty destructive, I would say. Especially in their ability to dominate others, control others. And that's probably in combination with this Capricorn moon and poor dignity in the seventh, bringing out the worst in his moon rather than the best. Let's see here. Yeah, looks the same pretty much. Yeah, so Aries and then disposited by Mars in the eighth, right? Mars and Aquarius in the eighth. Aquarius can be very cold because it's very intellectual, right? So if Mars is in the eighth, dispositing this Aries 10th house stellium, not stellium, but eclipse, north new moon eclipse. Um, so that's going to be quite aggressive, psychological, dominating others, controlling others, right? So anyway. Okay, so that's Taurus. Let's go to Gemini. And for that, we got Prince. And these make so much sense once you see it, right? Prince. Okay, Gemini, fine, but carrying a Taurian lunation in from his birth signature. It's very relevant for a musician. And you'll see this often with musicians. Not all the time, but a lot. Um, they'll have they'll be if they have Sun in Gemini, they might have a lunation in Taurus because Taurus relates to voice, especially if they're a singer, relates to beauty and aesthetics, right? So 27 degrees Taurus was the lunation cycle that he was born under, right? Venus moves from Taurus to Gemini. Sorry, Mercury moves from Taurus to Gemini. That's quite a ways away. Venus moves from Aries to Taurus, so Venus gains dignity. That's quite good. Mars also changes sign from Pisces to Aries, and so Mars gains a lot of dignity too. But all these planets that are changing sign are going to have some significance for him in his life, right? And we could see some sort of change over time, right? It'll embody this quality. And it's South Node Mercury here, and then South Node Venus in his natal chart. So those are both relevant and interesting. And I'm not going to delineate it too much, but I think you kind of get the picture. Mars is his ascendant lord, so that also denotes a transformation for him. Not only as a Scorpio rising, but he became the artist formerly known as Prince, right? And he was very transformative, yeah. And so that's not just, yeah, so that's partially North Node in Scorpio, Neptune in Scorpio in the 12th, which is probably very psychic, in fact, right? He probably, I mean, he wore those glasses with the third eye there. Yeah, he's probably very psychic, extremely sensitive. Um, but yeah, from Pisces to Aries, transformation, and then natal moon in Pisces, right? Um, Venus in Pisces, Venus in Aries to Pisces. Anyway, just looking for changes in retrograde. So Chiron, Saturn, Jupiter. Neptune? Neptune was probably retrograde. Um, yeah. Um, Also from seventh house to the eighth house. So relationships are going to be very important for him, and they were. They played a major role in his career. He was always taking women and like kind of making their career. Right? I think he did that several times, like Shaka Khan and Apollonia. I don't remember something like that. So yeah, which is interesting because Venus is then um in the sixth quadrant, but in the south node, but also in the sixth whole sign house, in the lunation, the Taurus lunation, right? So service to others, right? Which is what he did. He helped others rise in their career, especially women. All right, let's move on. The next one is Biggie, Notorious B.I.G. Also similar, right? And it's pretty obvious once you see it. And guys, there's so many of these. I had to pick and choose, obviously. I had to limit it to two, but there are many, many more examples of all of these. Just need to get it exact because my Virgo moon wants it to be exact. All right, so Gemini, 0 degrees, Saturn, but lunation cycle under Taurus. I mean, what do you expect from a man who's, you know, notoriously big, right? Big man. Um, let's see. Everything's pretty much the same in the same sign, although degrees are different. Um, let's see. Uh, natal moon in Virgo is in harmony with that lunation cycle, so that's probably a good thing, right? Um, the conjunction to Saturn is applying, so that's going to get worse over time. It's a night chart. Saturn is his most, out of sec malefic. It's his worst planet, so that's like also an indication that he's going to face trouble later on in his life, which he did. And that's pretty much it. I wonder if anything changed. So we got Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus and Pluto. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I could probably just see that by the sun, but anyway. Um, yeah, all right. So that's notoriously big man, BIG. Let's go to Cancer. No, wrong thing. And we got not a person, but America's Sibley chart. Just this will give us some insight into America's original nature. So why not? The last lunation was in Gemini. We like to think of America as a very Cancerian, and it is, but it's also tricky Gemini, tricky, clever. Oh, wait, 24-degree Gemini, 25-degree lunation, 25-degree Gemini lunation. Pretty much conjunct the natal Mars. Jupiter still in Cancer. Venus was in Gemini, 10 degrees, conjunct Mars and Uranus. Amazing, right? So something very explosive, freedom, right? Uranus is freedom. Of course, the natal moon is in Aquarius, right? Um, but yeah, Uranus also represents that freedom, that liberation, enlightenment, something very high-minded or aware, political, social, um, intellectually creative, technological. Uh, right? uh, let's see, Venus is rolling a 6. The MC, right? Was very passionate and communicative and freedom oriented. Day chart. So Mars is the most malefic planet, quite aggressive with others. It's true too. Um, Mercury. Mercury is pretty still. So what's happening there? So it's retrograde in the natal. And it's direct. See that? So that's really interesting. It's direct. So it's direct in the lunation, the Gemini lunation, and then it goes retrograde at the time. At some point, it stations retrograde, then goes retrograde at some point in between the lunation and America's founding. the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Um, so that's actually um, strengthens Mercury because it gives him a lot more focus and stability. And this very secretive eighth house Mercury relates to America's secrecy, CIA, hidden things, intelligence, right? Um, is water in a water house, so very, very secretive, right? Cultic even, hidden. So yeah. And it's dispositing the Mercury lunation. So it's a very important, the Gemini lunation. It's a very important planet for America. And it shows real deep, deep focus on secret hidden things. Also dispositing the Uranus, Mars, Venus conjunction in the seventh in the lunation, Gemini lunation. So America is very mercurial, very Geminian. All right. Next one in Cancer is Anthony Bourdain. So this one's interesting. 18 degrees Gemini with Gemini Mercury, Gemini 0 degrees Mercury at the lunation. This looks like an eclipse. It's 10 degrees from the south node. So that's also very relevant and interesting. And south node shows a detachment, past, right? So quick rise, and then at some point, letting go, unfortunately. Natal sun in Cancer, so the moon also is signified here. Even though it's a day chart, both the sun and the moon are going to be quite important for him. Sun is his ascendant lord, conjunct the south node in the lunation cycle. We know what happened. Uranus changes sign, which is really interesting. And so that indicates that Uranus is going to be, at some point, there's going to be some function that Uranus plays in his life that's changing from Cancer to Uranus, from Cancer to Leo. Uranus is trauma, it's accidents, it's in his 12th house, but moving into his first. So his mind, his mind is subconscious. It's going to be a change there, something deep inside his mind. You can see how interesting this can be, right? When you look at the planets and the changes they make from the lunation to the birth to the birth time. So Venus is retrograde in his natal chart. Still retrograde here. All right. It's dignified, but it's south node. And then north nodes and Sag. Hmm. Let's see. Yeah, so then his ascendant lord moves into Cancer in the 12th house, which is very, very watery and deep. And then Mars, his most malefic planet, is in conjunct the ascendant in the 8th house in water sign. So it's too much water, essentially. Saturn's in Scorpio. Um, but his career was a traveling writer, traveling, TV show guy, and so that's very strong in this 11th house, right? But it's also heavily influenced by the South Node. South Node gives life to things early on, then it sort of sucks the life out of it. And so there's a South Node eclipse. We know what happened, unfortunately. I mean, I think everyone, you know, adored Anthony Bourdain. I don't know anyone who doesn't. Moon Venus in conjunct is problematic because That's his heart and his joy. Not getting along very well. And let's see, Moon was dominating, but it's in Capricorn. I mean, Venus is in the stronger position, but dominated by this Capricorn heart, Capricorn Moon in the sixth house, no less. Very conflicted, conflictual, competitive. With a separating square from Neptune. So I know he had an issue with drugs and alcohol, but at least alcohol. I'm not sure about the drugs. And then Venus trine Neptune, also a love of alcohol. Jupiter, Pluto, sextile. Anyway, all right. So yeah, that's Anthony Bourdain, more of a Gemini than a can't. Well, Gemini lunation. Let's put it that way. Let's keep going. Stanley Kubrick is a director. He directed a lot of films, and we'll see that he's bringing a lot of Cancerian energy into his Leo, otherwise Leo sun. Cancerian, Cancer lunation. Got 24 degrees Cancer with Venus and Pluto. Stanley Kubrick. He directed a lot of films, right? Including Clockwork Orange and Eyes Wide Shut, and I think he did that. Yeah. But so Cancer for this ninth house, watery kind of quality that he had in his films. Yes, Leo, okay? We get the Leo part, career, public recognition, entertainment, all that. But the Cancerian theme played heavily into his films, especially Cancer in the ninth is going to bring in a religious quality, some darkness, heaviness, especially with Pluto here. It's day chart, so we can look at Mars. Mars and Taurus in the seventh, so some aggression. Um, for arts, Cancer in the ninth is going to be great, right? Very, especially for Scorpio rising, give a lot of depth. Scorpio moon natally in the first, exactly, pretty much trine the Sun, Moon, Venus, and Pluto, but mostly Sun, Moon, Venus right in there. The natal. I think I need to move a little bit quicker just for time's sake. So I'm just trying to be Mercury moved forward. Venus moves into Leo along with Sun. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, I think we can see that. It's pretty obvious with his films. They have a dark quality to them. And that's yeah, Scorpio rising, moon in Scorpio, but it's also bringing this Cancerian ninth house quality as well. All right. Let's go. Let's move on. Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott. You can kind of see that I started from the picking out charts from the low end of the alphabet. Details. Doesn't really matter. Okay. So Sam Elliott, Cancer lunation cycle. So moon's in good dignity here. But it's also an eclipse, right? Exact, to the exact degree in the 11th whole sign house. So like Sam Elliott, so this is more in the friends network group house. So, but it is Cancer. So it's like Sam Elliott, he's often the narrator. He's got that deep voice. Yeah, he's got a lot of Virgo qualities, Leo, but there's also a Cancerian quality to him, which is that you feel protected. Like he's the guy who's going to show up with a gun to, shoot, chase away the criminals when you get into trouble. Like he's that guy. Um, he's a protector, he's a caretaker. That's the vibe that he has. He's not just, yeah, some of that's coming from Virgo rising. Virgo likes to serve others, but I think also the Cancerian lunation plays into it. Um, and Cancer is very tough. It's got that crabby shell, right? And he has that as well. Virgo, not so much. Leo, not so much. Leo's very creative. Virgo's very, academic, conservative, hardworking. But the toughness is very Cancerian. Right? Cancer is tough. What else can we see from here? Yeah, I mean the eclipse. It's a North Node eclipse, so that's something that's going to grow in time. His path, his sun, moon, moon's in domicile, moon's ruling the 11th. So friends, networks, probably makes him incredibly popular. Right, 11th house is where you're going to see popularity, like fan base or like cult following. Um, but yeah, there's probably a lot we could, more I could dive into, but I just need to move through these without taking too much time on each one. So that's Leo. Let's go to Virgo, and we're going to bring up Jack Black. Another one that makes so much sense. Wow. These all make sense. Jack Black is a Leo in disguise. Well, not quite, but Leo lunation. Born under a Leo lunation. See, probably 20 degrees Leo. Oops. All right. So 20-degree Leo new moon, lunation. Um, the Mercury moves from Virgo to Libra, but it's conjuncting Uranus, and so that's where he gets that comedy. Uranus, Mercury, Uranus, Jupiter. So that's the comedy. But South Node Pluto also really interesting because of his whole demeanor is quite plutonic, destructive. He plays rock and roll, right? Was in a rock and roll band. That is the third, um, yeah, third whole sign house, third quadrant. Um, Leo, right? But he's more of a Leo than a Virgo. I mean, yeah, he's a Virgo sun, fine. But he really screams Leo, right? With his over the top antics. Yeah, it's okay. We can look to Uranus, Jupiter. We can look to this trinity of planets here, plus South Node Pluto, making them so like intense, right? But the Leo, especially for the voice, um, it's very prominent, right? We don't really need to deliberate on this point very much. Um, I think it's quite obvious. And he's not Mercury in Virgo, right? He's not this kind of like intellectual, heady, um, writer or something like that. Let's keep going. Dave Chappelle, another one who makes perfect sense once you understand the lunation cycles. 6 degrees of it. Virgo is very conservative. Leo loves to be seen and heard and enjoy itself and entertain. All right, 6 degrees Leo in the 11th house where the sun is in domicile. Actually 12th whole sign house, 11th quadrant, 12th whole sign house. So interesting. Um, but yeah, um, now the sun Yeah, Sun is ruling the 12th quadrant in the 11th quadrant. 12th whole sign house in the 11th. So groups, networks, but also like the 12th house, loss, 12th house is creativity. I mean, he was a part of a group, but it didn't really work out very well. And that's sort of, we could see that, like the TV show kind of thing. He went solo. 12th house is about solo activity. So we could see like the sun is moving from more from the 11th, taking 11th house influence, moving into the 12th. Um, Mercury also, well, Mercury clearly in the 11th, or conjunct the 11th cusp, right? Moving into the 12th. Mercury also the ascendant lord. Um, Venus goes from Virgo to Libra. So Venus gains dignity, and that's probably quite good. And it's applying to it's passed over Pluto, applying to Uranus, and Uranus would be the humor, the comedy. Um, the Venus Uranus proximity is what really helps with the comedy a lot. Plus Jupiter and Aquarius, of course, really. And this is exactly opposed, almost exactly opposed. Well, yeah, between the two, the lunation is almost directly opposite Jupiter and Aquarius. Jupiter and Aquarius is so common for comedians, it's ridiculous, right? Saturn changes dignity from Gemini to Cancer, so it loses dignity. That's interesting. So his authority decreases, perhaps. That's the direction from fair dignity to lacking dignity. Um, Saturn is his fifth and sixth lord. Yeah. So like pertaining to career, entertainment, and daily work, right? Jupiter in the fifth, entertainment, comedy. um, some loss of dignity there. Interesting, right? Uh Mars in Aries. Well, Mars goes from Aries to Taurus. So Mars starts out in dignity, and then he's born under a less dignified Mars in the eighth. So that he has some issues with shared resources, power control issues, um, things of that nature. Mars is in a superior square to the lunation cycle. So I don't know how to. I mean, in the outer chart, Mars is more like a trine by sign, but as it progresses, it's moving into a well, it's a separating square because both the sun and the moon, but it's still there. So there's some conflict there with Mars and the lunation cycle. Anyway, um, interesting, interesting stuff. All right, let's move on. Libra, F. Scott Fitzgerald. F. Scott Fitzgerald was a writer. He was a contemporary of Ernest Hemingway, and he wrote beautifully. He wrote often about relationships and being rich, but it doesn't sound very good. But I mean, he's a great writer. I mean, in the modern woke climate, anything rich is like, oh, how dare you? How dare you be rich? But um, he wrote about that sort of thing. And so he was an author, and his lunation cycle was square in the middle of Virgo, right? Eighth house, no less, but Virgo. Eighth house influence, um, intimate relationships, right? Intimacy, yeah, shared resources, things like that, but also Virgo writing. And then also because Virgo is bringing in this kind of service to others, right? And then eighth house is bringing in the sort of domination over others. So he's like balancing these two facets in his books. He finally comes to a more balanced place in his birth because sun's in Libra, Venus is Libra, Um, Venus is in Libra both. Mercury is in Libra both. Um, but yeah, there's that lunation that brings in a sort of struggle of relationship balances. Um, South Node Jupiter, that's quite it brings imparts a lot of wisdom, right? But and luck early on in life, but not so much later in life. Um, Natal moon in Taurus is harmonious with the Virgo lunation. But yeah, for a writer, this is perfect. Makes perfect sense. Next one. Gandhiji. Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji. That's what they call him. Gandhiji also Libra with the Virgo lunation. And I think this one makes sense. He wasn't a writer, but Libra's about peace and um equality, and it's very sort of wishy-washy. It doesn't really stand up for itself very well, Libra. I mean, other factors, could indicate otherwise, but on its own, Libra is just sort of like, yeah, let's keep the peace. Gandhi did not do that at all. Gandhi was a troublemaker. I mean, in a good way. He, was a fighter, of course. So yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of Scorpio, which in the first whole sign house, or first quadrant rather, second whole sign house. Um, so that's quite relevant. The Mars is in 0 degrees Scorpio in the Virgo lunation. Um, but invokes that also invokes Mercury. So Mercury moves from Libra to Scorpio. So Mercury becomes much more intense, strong. Venus moves from good dignity in Libra. And so he started out as a lawyer, and then he wanted to defeat England, right? It's like, I mean, law very much in Libra, right? Because balance, equality, justice, right? But Scorpio is not about Scorpio is about like a vengeful justice. It's like, you fuck with me, I will end you. All right. You're gonna see my claws and my fangs and my poison. That's what we're talking about with Scorpio. And so Venus goes from like, let's make peace and law and justice to I'm gonna kick your ass, right? Venus, Mars, and Scorpio. It's like very, very intense, passionate, sensual, sexual, right? But also vengeful, right? And then so he's got 3 planets in Scorpio. And then Virgo, Virgo is very critical and sharp and fighty and aggressive, right? Um, so this is the 12th whole sign house, moving into the first whole sign house. So for an exotic, he worked in South Africa for a while. So that could be the 12th house thing. And then he went back to India and to beat up England, right? To kick England out of his country. A very Scorpio thing. Yeah. And let's just see. Series is stationary. I have no idea how that's going to play into it, but um, in his communications or something, writing, speaking, communicating, and it's actually in conjunct with Mercury. So there's probably, yeah, that's something for a deep dive. Um, Uranus conjunct the MC, so politics, social issues makes sense. Cancer, protecting the vulnerable, which is India in this case. Uh, Jupiter actually goes direct. Jupiter's retrograde. So Jupiter is a very significant planet for um, Mahatma Gandhi. It's ruling the third, so his intellect, his communications, short distance travel, sixth house, also conflicts, and it's conjunct Pluto, so very heavy duty. Um, yeah, let's look. So Jupiter in his natal chart. Yeah, 22 days before. So um yeah, anyway, it was so it's retrograde, but it was stationary. So yeah, that's significant. It's gonna play out, with his relationships plus the eighth house influence, like somehow like dominating others or shared resources, um, death, rebirth, transformation, especially with Pluto here, and crisis, but it's very powerful overall and probably gets a lot of support. All right. Okay. That was Gandhiji. Let's go to Scorpio, and we're gonna go to Anne Hathaway, the Scorpio lights. Scorpio lights, I'm calling them because they're carrying in a lot of Libra energy. Anne Hathaway, despite her heavy Scorpio stellium, has Libran energy, right? And that kind of makes sense when we think about Anne Hathaway, right? I don't feel threatened by Anne Hathaway. Let's put it that way. And Scorpio is very threatening, Libra isn't. So she kind of has that Scorpio like quality. Whereas like some Scorpios, they're just very pleasant. They're happy go lucky, they're very pleasant, easy to get along with, and you're like, okay, I kind of see the Scorpio, but also it's not that intense, not that scorpionic, right? Where other Scorpios were like, okay, we get it, Scorpio. You're super duper intense, sexual, psychological, manipulative, dominating, controlling. We get it. Like, okay, we get it. Don't fuck with you. We get it. Right. Anne Hathaway is not like that. She does have some dark sexuality, right? You know, dominant scorpionic energy, a lot of it, right? But then she has a Libra moon, and so we can see it that way as well. But when we look at the lunation, we see it's 23 degrees Libra with, so Venus is in Libra. Venus moves into Scorpio with Anne Hathaway. Um, Mercury moves into Scorpio, and then the sun also moves into Scorpio. Um, Jupiter was in Scorpio. So anything else? Mars moves into Capricorn, so Mars gains dignity, conjunct the South Node. That's interesting. It conjuncts Neptune first, and then conjuncts South Node and moves past them both. So that's going to be significant as well. Like any planet transits that happen during that lunation cycle, they'll play out in the person's life in some capacity, I imagine. I believe. I think we'll see that. Um, yeah. So this also signifies that as she gets older, she's probably going to play more heavy, dark, scorpionic roles and move from um 10th house. It's actually 11th whole sign house, but 10th because of the MC. So like working with others, friends, groups, career, um, into um 12th house. 12th house is movies as well. It's very deeply creative. Um, but it can be loss and other things, sexual, bed pleasures, psychic, esoteric, foreign, exotic things. Anyway, so that's Anne Hathaway. So if you were ever wondering about her, that's probably why. Um, and then let's look at one more. John Cleese. John Cleese was a member of the Monty Python crew, and he's hilarious. They all are. All the Monty Pythons are funny as can be. I used to watch them nonstop when I was a kid. It's like some of the funniest shit ever made. Um, we can see the Aquarius influence of Mars here, right? And so like the funny walks, that was John Cleese, right? And that's Mars and Aquarius. Um, But yeah, Libra lunation, right? And he's not he's another Scorpio light. Yeah, he's probably got some Scorpio qualities, but also very Libran, right? Not threatening at all, John Cleese. Um, and this kind of looks pretty close to an eclipse. Venus is in Libra, and then it moves into Scorpio. Mercury's in Scorpio in both. But this so second house moving into the third. Um, Voice, communication, aesthetics, and then obviously Mars, Gemini MC, Uranus opposite Mercury in the natal chart, and so that brings in a lot of humor. So yeah, Mercury Venus, Uranus opposition, and then Mars in Aquarius for the humor. And then Aries moon. So that's kind of like a that's really interesting because that's like the almost the full moon. But it's directly opposite the Libra lunation. So yeah, that's John Cleese. Let's go to Sagittarius. And then we got Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen was or is a chess champion. One of the greats. And we'll see that this lunation cycle makes sense for him being a chess champion. Because now we get the Scorpio lunation. And Scorpio deals with strategy, right? And it's also conjunct Pluto. Pluto is going to play majorly into a chess champion. Pluto's strategy. We see that again and again. So the Sun conjunct Pluto, Moon in the and Venus, in second house, Scorpio stellium, essentially, Scorpio new moon, Scorpio lunation. And Venus is his ascendant lord. So Venus is moving from Scorpio to Sagittarius, conjunct the Sun. His Jupiter stationary, and that's another reason why he's so successful at chess. It's stationary and it's in the 11th house. So yeah, Leo, but the abstraction of the 11th house, the very complex nature of the 11th house, which it has that Aquarian vibe, the energy, vibrational understanding abstraction in a very, very deep way. Jupiter stationary. Moon is applying to a square with Jupiter, and that's not bad because they both like each other, moons and dignity here. But essentially, yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. It's just that Scorpio and Pluto combination gives very strategic, deep kind of understanding. He's not philosophizing. He's not traveling as a chessman. I mean, he might be traveling as a chess, but that's not his career. Yeah, third house plays a role, Sagittarius for sure. But yeah, it's Sagittarius does not really say chess master. I might, especially if it's a Scorpio lunation. But all right. Let's do another one. Aaron Carter. And this one's obvious too. I mean, this one makes tons of sense considering his life. Not a true Sag or a Sag with Scorpio lunation. Born under Scorpio lunation. Bring in scorpionic elements. And he was very scorpionic, let's be honest. 28th degree of Scorpio, lunation cycle with Mercury and Pluto. So in his natal chart, it's got Mars and Pluto, but in the lunation, there was Mercury, Pluto. day chart, Mars is the most malefic planet, so that definitely adds up. In the lunation, Mars is in Libra, passive aggressive Libra, not in great dignity. Then it gets strong, but it's also conjunct Pluto, so it's too intense. What else? The Venus passes Uranus, radicalizes. So Venus is conjunct Saturn in the lunation cycle, which is really interesting because Venus conjunct Saturn would not do drugs. It would not do, it would be very unlikely to do drugs. I mean, the Uranus is going to change that somewhat, but Venus conjunct Saturn is going to be much more conservative, but it's separating from Saturn, passes through Uranus, passes over Neptune, lands on the other side of Neptune in Capricorn. So it's like taking on, it's moving away from Saturn, taking on Uranus and Neptunian energy. More Neptune. I mean, Saturn, it's moving away from Uranus as well, but it does in its cycle moves over that. Venus is joy, Venus is pleasure, just in general. It's the fifth house of entertainment, fun, games, MC Lord. So the nodes actually change sign and go from Aries, Libra to Virgo, Pisces, which is really interesting because Pisces is much more about, relating to drugs and alcohol. He died, obviously, of drugs and alcohol. And look at the trine there. Scorpio, 28 degrees, Scorpio, 28 degree Pisces. Interesting in the lunation, Scorpio lunation cycle. Scorpio would also be the 12th whole sign house, so that makes a lot of sense too, because you bring in that, which is good for creativity, music, but does potentially signify loss, right? And Scorpio, death, endings, and new beginnings. All right. Let's go to Capricorn, and we got Bradley Cooper. Not a true Capricorn. Well, I mean, that's relative, but obviously born under a Sag lunation. And we'll see why this makes sense. Okay. It makes sense because Bradley Cooper was, among other things, nominated to be the sexiest man of the year or alive or whatever 1 year, right? I do have to use the bathroom for 1 second, so I'm just going to pause it. I'm back. Sorry about that. All right. Bradley Cooper. So he's got this whole Sagittarius stellium in the first house as far as the lunation is going, cycle is going, along with North Node. So Mars, Neptune, North Node. We're going to ignore the MC, but Mercury, Sun, and Moon, and Vesta. Might as well, right? It's a huge stellium. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets, an asteroid, and the North Node, right? Right in the first house. North Node is the same, Neptune's the same, Mars, same sign. Everything else has changed. Signs, Mercury, Venus move into Capricorn along with the sun, right? Moon moves into Libra. Everything else is pretty similar. Yeah, but so yeah, it just shows like this huge emphasis on his face, on his looks, on the first house, his person, his identity, right? And that shows up in his career, like nominated the sexiest, one of the sexiest men alive or whatever, right? Of course, we could see like in the natal chart that's still, prominent North Node, Neptune, Mars. So Neptune, exotic, Mars, very masculine, right? But bringing in this a lot of Sagittarian qualities into this Capricorn. So he's not just Capricornian, he's also very, very Sagittarian, right? Extremely so. And that's going to come through in his personality, in his acting. It's first house Sagittarius. So a bit more like, fiery, wild, celebratory, positive. I mean, he's not just Capricornian, right? The Sag really comes through strong. All right, let's keep going. This one is a really makes a lot of sense. Khalil Gibran. Now, if you know who he is, immediately you're gonna be like, oh yeah. Khalil Gibran was he wrote the third most translated book of all time, The Prophet, which, by the way, is my favorite book. The Prophet is an amazingly beautiful book because it's wisdom, poetry, prose, all in one. It's kind of like a story. No, that didn't work. Sorry, must be talking too much. Did it work? It did work. Looks the same as yeah, it looks the same as Bradley Cooper pretty much. But it's not. December 10th, 1882. Um, so yeah, we got Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, um, all in Sagittarius, right? Venus actually goes backwards because it's probably so it's retrograde, obviously. Interesting. Mercury goes forward. Mars goes forward into Capricorn, so Mars gains dignity. Sun. But Sagittarius, he was a philosopher. He was a spiritualist. He was like deeply, deeply spiritual. Okay, we do get South Node Neptune here, and Saturn, but sixth house Taurus, so like writing, right? Jupiter and Gemini, writing, second house for aesthetics and voice. He also drew, so and that's you could say like so Saturn, South Node, right? Very strongly third house influence. But the Sagittarian, and so Mars, fifth house, 12th house, highly creative, right? Night chart, so Saturn's is most difficult. So difficult beginnings. Even though it's in Taurus, sixth house, probably had to work really hard when he was young. But spiritual endings, spiritual second half, Scorpio 12th. And I say that because he was evolved, right? He was a very, very evolved soul, very enlightened in many ways. And he, Uranus conjunct the MC in Virgo, like he wrote about very high-minded, enlightened topics. So I don't, even though it's in Scorpio 12th house, I think that's just like diving deep into the subconscious for a man like this. But the Sagittarian influence is sponsored by Jupiter in because Jupiter and Gemini, like you would be like, oh, he's not very spiritual. No, think again. He is. He's highly spiritual. He's what I would consider an enlightened being, right? And then he's got the Venus Mercury conjunct in Sag, so that's like really great for writing as well, for any sort of artistic expression. With Mercury and Venus, Venus beautifies the expression. Yeah, so that's really interesting. Definitely an interesting lunation with Mars exactly conjunct Moon and Sun, but it's not the out of sec malefic, so it's going to behave much better than Saturn. Saturn's over here in the sixth. Anyway, that's Khalil Gibran. He wrote The Prophet, right? Jupiter, Sagittarius, Guru, The Prophet. Okay. And he wrote other stuff too. Okay. Let's go on. Let's move on to Aquarius, and we got Phil Collins. Not a true Aquarian. Just kidding. Um, a true Aquarian, but with a Capricorn lunation. And we'll see this making sense. Phil Collins was, I mean, if you're as old as me or older, then you know who Phil Collins is, hopefully. He was the drummer for Genesis, and then like he had all these hit songs in the 80s and hit albums, and like every single one was just like his face, right? Looking like super duper serious. And we can see that with the moon in Scorpio, you know, in his natal chart, right? It's all about his face, like profiles of his face. It's like the moon. It's always like the moon in Scorpio. Um, Interesting, right? But Capricorn, right? Structure, not necessarily rhythm, but like, he's the drummer, but he's also the leader of the band. He's the singer. He does everything. Like he's very kind of like this dominant personality. Um, some Mercury, Venus moves from um Capricorn to Aquarius. He did change, his career did change a lot, right? Started out in Genesis, um, with in the so third house relating to hands, drumming. Obviously it could go other ways, could be guitar, but he chose drum, Capricorn, structure, right? Um, I know some people are gonna be like, well, you said Uranus was rhythm. Well, I don't think anything is, I just want to clarify, I don't think anything is exclusively rhythm, right? It's not like you're only going to see Uranus show up when there's a drummer, right? Uranus can be rhythm and it can indicate all kinds of rhythmic guitars. All music is rhythmic, right? First of all, so Uranus is not exclusively drums, but Capricorn is also very structural, right? So drums are structural. Third third house is hands, so it's something very, you know obviously in this case it's relating to drums. Mercury's in Capricorn in both cases in the third house. um yeah, Mercury's also opposite Uranus, so it is bringing in that rhythmic quality. What else can we say? um Aquarius also does relate to music, by the way. Aquarius, because of the energetic quality of Aquarius, the glyph even is waves, right? And so what is music but wave, energetic wave patterns. So Aquarius often relates to music. um Pisces is highly creative. It's not necessarily music, but it can be for sure, and it's going to be much more melodic. Pisces is not rhythmic. Your Aquarius is going to be very rhythmic. Capricorn is going to be very structural, right? So anyway, leadership, Capricorn, right? He's very strong leadership quality. Phil Collins. All right, third house. Let's go to another one. Michael Hutchence, the singer of In Excess, another very popular band in the 80s. And yeah, Moon does not do well in Capricorn. That's the other thing about a Capricorn lunation, is it's going to be difficult for the moon, and the houses the moon rules. You even look at that with Phil Collins, but it would be relationships for him, for Michael Hutchence. Very difficult relationships in the 12th house of loss. Um, right. So let's see here. Mars moves into Capricorn, gains dignity. Mercury moves into Capricorn, gains dignity also by virtue of being out of Sagittarius, where it loses dignity. Jupiter's in Sag, that's good. Um, Venus moves out of Venus also moves into better dignity too. So what's really interesting, like if you look at his life, then there should be like this progression of where he's gaining a lot of dignity, right? Um, but then the seventh house, yeah, I mean Uranus is there in the seventh quadrant, moving to the eighth, and he committed suicide, right? Super duper popular. Lead singer. There's his private life was often covered in the entertainment. Um, he was known for a string of love affairs with actresses, models, and singers, and his private life was often covered in the international press. He had a daughter. Um, uh, he killed himself, suicide. So that's we can see that, Pluto and Uranus in the eighth. Um, you know, Sun is dispositing the ruling over the eighth cusp, right? And it's in the 12th. So that's not necessarily bad, but I think because the relationships were not working out very well, and then the intimacy sort of, if Uranus is in the eighth, then he's probably jumping into bed with people very quickly, Uranus, right? But then not having long lasting relationships, but obsessing. I mean, this is ninth whole sign house, but it's still probably carrying an eighth house significations, obsessing about intimacy. Um, yeah. Capricorn 12th house with moon in poor dignity. And then Saturn. Saturn's in Capricorn. Saturn's part of this lunation cycle. Saturn, it's daytime chart, but so Mars is here conjunct Saturn in the 12th. Mars is in good dignity in Capricorn, but it's still out of sect malefic. It's trying Pluto. Um, Moon's in Scorpio. So the moon is in poor dignity in both. And here it's conjunct Neptune in Scorpio, right? Here it's conjunct Saturn, and here it's conjunct Neptune. So yeah, it seems like it's just like being hit. So these relationships were just very difficult, like jumping into bed with everyone, right? And then just being very dissatisfied at Moon in poor dignity by relationships. And then he's just like, I don't know. He just couldn't take it. Despite all the success. I don't want to judge him, but it kind of defies logic in many ways, being so super successful and then you just kill yourself. Being so super successful in so many ways, right? Like having endless women to date and to sleep with. Right? Um, but yeah, that's the way it goes. I mean, this is very troubling, but yeah. 12th house Capricorn. So there's something very deeply psychologically, because even though it's in the first whole sign house, um, it's behind the ascendant. So it's going to be like his own mind, his own thoughts, the thoughts that creep up on you, that you just like, I don't know if you guys have it, like probably a lot of you do, like where you're just like, you have these thoughts and they really bother you. They can be very destructive. I have Pluto in the 12th, so I know what that's like. But any planets that are behind the ascendant are going to they're going to be in your head. They're going to be in your mind and they're going to cause trouble in that way. So Moon in Capricorn, Mars in Capricorn, even though it's Mars plus Saturn in Capricorn, where Mars is the out of sect malefic, right? So Mars is doing damage both in natally, and then the moon is doing, causing the trouble. It's conjunct Saturn, right? And Ceres. Ceres is malefic. So there's problems there for sure in his own head, right? It's not coming from outside. He has money, he has success, he has fame, he has women, he has everything. The problem is in his own head. That's why he killed himself. All right. Um, let's go to another one who did not end well, and that is Kurt Cobain. Let's see here. And so the other thing, right? Not the other thing, but the thing that keeps recurring is this some sort of change when we have the lunation in one sign and then the sun in the other. There's some sort of dramatic shift that the person experiences, and sometimes that's death. So 20 degrees Aquarius, Kurt Cobain in the sixth whole sign house, which is very hardworking, academic, but competitive, conflictual, right? Bringing in a lot of potential conflicts, imbalances in relationship, right? He was subservient to you ever see videos of him with Courtney Love? She absolutely controls him. right? Absolutely. And we all love Kurt Cobain way more than anyone loves Courtney Love. I mean, I don't know why it's ironic that she calls herself Courtney Love because she's very unlovable. Sorry. She's unlovable. Whereas Kurt Cobain is immensely lovable. He's got the tremendous Moon Jupiter conjunction in the 11th house, makes him insanely popular and gives him like these devoted, you know, groupies who are just, would probably, do anything for him. Um, and then his lunation is in Aquarius, which does deal with music, right? The vibration aspect, but it's in the sixth house, right? So writing great music, of course, writing fantastic music, but also bringing in a lot of subservience and conflict potentially. Mars. Mars moves out of uh, Libra, where it's in detriment, and then moves into Scorpio and domicile. So Mars is going to be a major influence in his life, and that's in the second house, third whole sign house, but second quadrant, and it's conjunct the South Node. And so, like, yeah, his voice is singing, very dynamic, very powerful, right? Very intense. What else? Everything else is, the same sign, Mercury, Venus, just the sun and moon. Moon's in Cancer here, and it's in Aquarius here. Yeah, so there's a nighttime chart. Saturn is his most difficult, so his relationships, and this directly points to Courtney Love, right? Courtney Love, like, Courtney Love was to Kurt Cobain as "Oh no, it's Yoko" was to John Lennon. So there you go. This is our generation's "Oh no, it's Yoko." Courtney Love, Courtney Unlove, Courtney. No one loves you. Sorry. Probably some people love her, but anyway, I don't mean to be mean. I'm just having fun. All right, let's go to another one. Last one, not the last one, close to the last one. It was a surprise one. It's just an extra one. All right, George Harrison of the Beatles, um, also died young, before his time. And so there's some parallels with Kurt Cobain, known at the time. Um, let's get it exact. My Virgo moon demands it. Okay, 15 degrees Aquarius. And that's the fourth whole sign house. The sun progresses into Pisces when he's born, into the fifth whole sign house. So Venus and Pisces in both. And he was born. No, that's an eclipse. It's an eclipse. That new moon. This was there. This was a new moon. Yeah, it's within 9 degrees of the south node. So it's a south node eclipse. And that actually is unfortunate, right? Because the south node creates detachment, creates, it early on, it fills, it gives life to whatever it touches. And then later, as the person progresses, it sucks that life out, right? And makes them more spiritual. But this is the sun and the moon. It's his vitality, right? Natally, his moon is right on the ascendant in Scorpio. Um, Great for artists, expressive people, hard on the sleeve kind of thing. But if you look at the eighth house, there's trouble because nighttime chart, Saturn is the out of sec malefic, Uranus is here. It's in Gemini. He got stabbed. Gemini. Uh, Uranus is, something very sudden and dramatic and like bad, evil, right? Also, right on, exactly in conjunct his moon, Uranus over the moon in Scorpio, where moon is in poor dignity. It's debilitated, right? Opposite its exaltation. So this Uranus and Saturn is dominating his ascendant and his moon. Moon ruling ninth house, dispositing Jupiter, so his luck runs out. What else can we say? The Mercury moves from so Mars is still in the third house. He's a guitar player. Mars and Scorpio, so or sorry, Capricorn. That makes a lot of sense, right? Third house, Mars is his ascendant lord, so he's going right into the third house. Capricorn, Mars and Capricorn playing guitar. But there's something about the fourth house, home, brick and mortar. That's going to be very um, important to him. And then, fifth house, obviously, is Pisces. But starting out in the fourth house, moving into the fifth house. So I'm not sure how to interpret that. I don't know what home meant to him, but it probably meant a lot. His parents, his upbringing. Um, he could have gotten this. I mean, he's probably started young, as they all did. Anyway, Mercury changes sign, goes from Capricorn to Aquarius. That's 11th house. So that relates somehow to the band. Mercury also rules the 8th house. And so that's connecting to Mars and the Aquarius lunation. Anyway, last one I wanted to look at was my own chart, because you're seeing all these various lunations of different signs, and I just wanted to show you mine, which is same sign lunation. So I'm pure Gemini, in case you were wondering. Pretty obvious, but yeah, lunation lunation was in Gemini, 7 degrees Gemini. Venus was in Gemini. Vesta was in Gemini. So Mercury, what's interesting about my chart, Mercury doesn't move at all. I'll tell you why, because so you can see here, May 28th to June 5th. So that's not that far. I wasn't born that far away from the lunation, right? Moon only got to Virgo first square. So that's about 7 days. Mercury just was at the tail end of its retrograde, then it stationed, and then just started to go direct. But you can see my Mercury is very, very stable. It's very slow in my natal chart, 17 arc minutes. And it's in Taurus, which Taurus is, as you know, is the slowest, most stubborn sign, right? And so like my Mercury's just like focused. I mean, but there's because Jupiter is expanding it. So Jupiter is making it much more Jupiterian, much more philosophical, big picture. But still, there's a very, very solid quality to my Mercury, which is dispositing my Sun, my Moon, my Venus, right? In both the lunation and the birth chart. That's why I'm like just like like so stubborn with my opinions and so focused, and just be like, no, this is what it is, this is it, and anyone who says anything else is probably wrong, right? I mean, that's kind of my style, but what do you want? It's Mercury and Taurus that's just like not moving, right? So yeah, it's very focused, and applying to a trine with the moon in Virgo. So there's mutual reception here by exaltation. Mercury is exalted and domicile in Virgo. Moon is exalted in Taurus. So it's my Mercury is pretty solid, like very, very focused, very, very fixed, very solid, very slow. I'm a slow learner, but like once I get something, I really understand it in a very grounded way, very earthy, Taurian, sort of simple, fixed way that's like solid, right? Not moving. Anyway, just thought I'd share that. Um, I'm not a mixed Gemini. I'm a solid Gemini. All right. So that's the lunation cycle, and it really is interesting. I encourage you to look at your own chart, find out when the last moon was, last new moon, was it in the same sign as your sun sign, or was it in the sign previous? If it was in the sign previous, you're carrying some of that energy, and whatever house that represents in your birth chart, you are going to embody some of that in your life. You probably weren't aware of this. But maybe you were, thinking there's something to the cusps, right? That's what's really going on. It's the previous lunation cycle. Um, yeah, and the early degrees of any sign is probably going to be an early a previous sign lunation cycle, carrying in that sign in that house energy into your life. So it makes a lot of sense. Um, yeah, I don't think a lot of people are talking about this. I definitely didn't invent it. I'm sure somebody somewhere was like, notice this. I mean, I know they have, but not that many people really talk about it or make videos or anything like that. Fact is, people still think cusps are the real issue, when it's much more likely that this lunation cycle is the real reason behind the whole cusp phenomenon. So guys, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're going to bother to hit the dislike button, why not just like tell me why? Like, people keep doing that. I'm just like, look, you already know my style. I'm not doing anything that different. Like, but you're gonna hit the dislike button, at least tell me why. Like, give me like an honest criticism, an honest critique. But anyway, or not, whatever. Um, yeah. Also book a reading with me. My email address is macrogoalmachine@yahoo.com. I still need support. My situation has not, resolved itself. Just because I'm not talking about it all the time doesn't mean it's gone away. I have no idea what's going to happen to my mom or me. I just don't have any updates about it. It's still the same. So, anyway, thanks, guys. Mediocre astrologer signing off. Man, he's okay. Just a clue, guys. I'm not going to keep that name forever. A lot of people, or a number of people, told me to move on, graduate from that, and I will. Just picking the right time. So, letting you know what's ahead. But all right, guys. Laugh it off, win before you win, take a victory laugh, all that good stuff. You know what to do. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.